Welcome to Barnstable Today. I'm Nick Cortez. Just a reminder that full-length meetings, special events, and every program we air here on Channel 18 can be viewed online. You can check it all out in the town's video archives at town.barnstable.ma.us. The Barnstable Municipal Airport accommodates hundreds of aircraft on any given day, but last week the airport's East Ramp played host to 3 very special planes, all of which played integral roles in the Allied victory in World War II. A B-17 Flying Fortress, a B-24 Liberator, and a P-51 Mustang, all beautifully restored, were on display as the Wings of Freedom tour made its annual stop at the airport. Visitors had the opportunity to crawl inside the aircraft and even to experience a flight on one of the legendary planes. If you didn't have a chance to make it to the show, you're in luck. We paid a visit to the show last week, not only to take a look at the planes, but also to learn more about their fighting history and about the Collins Foundation, a Massachusetts-based nonprofit that brings historic aircraft to airports all around the nation. Take a look. Well, we're here at Barnstable Municipal Airport today at the Wings of Freedom show. 3 amazing aircraft from the World War II era. And joining me now to talk about the biggest one here, the B-17 Flying Fortress, is Fred Lewis. He's a volunteer for the Collins Foundation and member of the Board of Trustees. Fred, thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Nick.
Now, let's first talk a little bit about this specific plane. What are we looking at right here?
Well, it's probably the most popular one, and people recognize it the most. It would be the B-17 Flying Fortress. A lot of movies were made after it. 12 O'Clock High, Memphis Belle, The War Lover. So people recognize this plane. It got a lot of the notoriety, got a lot of the press, but it flew a lot of missions. But this B-17 is named after a Boeing. The 909 is the name of it. Flew with the 91st Bomb Group. That's the paint scheme we put on the aircraft to commemorate that group, pay tribute to that 91st Bomb Group. Flew 140 missions. You can tell it's signified by the bombs on the front of the nose, which is typically how they did it, each number of mission. And it didn't lose a crew member, which was really remarkable for the B-17, especially the early part of the war when they didn't have fighter escort. So this plane, we traveled the nation with the Wings of Freedom tour, about 110 cities, takes us about 300 days. So it's truly a flying circus.
So, Fred, tell me a little bit about the Collins Foundation and how you've come to acquire and maintain these planes. I'd have to imagine it's an incredible undertaking.
It is. The Collins Foundation, a nonprofit educational foundation, was established in 1979, first with cars and a living history of transportation and sleighs and ice-cutting machines. That's where Dr. Collins started. Then he got into flying and started talking to the vets, and the vets wanted to get some of the planes in the air. Now we can all visit museums and read storyboards, and that's nice, but to get the plane in the air is the hardest part. And I think what we do is try to show that is to maintain the parts, get the volunteers out here. We find a parts supply. We work on the planes day for 300 days straight, and it works out great to keep them in the air and is to travel throughout the whole nation with the planes and go to all those small towns that people didn't. There's a vet. I guarantee you, at least in the 110 cities we've been this year, there is a vet of World War II in each town. Now those numbers are going down, of course, but we're going to still fly these planes as long as it pays tribute to those guys.
Well, pilots come from all over the country and all over the world to fly these aircraft, and right now we're standing in front of a P-51 fighter with Pat McGarry. He's come all the way from Phoenix, Arizona to bring this plane to us here in Hyannis today. Pat, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for being here. We're glad to come out and see everyone here.
It's a privilege to be here and see these amazing planes, and I wonder if you could tell me a little bit about the history of this P-51 Mustang.
This was a 1942 P-51 built by North American. It actually went over, saw some service in England in World War II, and unfortunately was crashed over there. And here in the mid-90s, the crash was recovered, what was left of it, and was rebuilt to how you see it now. So it's virtually a 1994 model airplane. It's all rebuilt to like new.
Talk to me about the functionality of this plane when it was flying as an active aircraft in the military.
This was a fighter plane. It was basically made to go head-to-head, air-to-air with the Germans, like the Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs, and that's what this was all about.
Was it independent fighter missions, or was it mostly escorting these two larger bombers?
Yeah, basically escort the bombers and look for the fighters that were coming to shoot down our bombers.
So I got to ask you, you fly this plane, and I mean, obviously the flying experience of one of those two larger bombers has to be totally different than what it's like to fly this. What is it like to fly this plane?
This thing's just a hot rod. It's like, a Porsche with wings. It's amazing. It's got, over 1,400 horsepower and, 2 seats, so it goes really good. Top speed, our normal cruising speed is 250 miles an hour, so it really moves right along.
I'm so jealous of you. I really am.
Me too, sometimes.
So, and I guess the last question is, what's it like to sort of be a regular part of history here? Because this is really what this is.
It is. It's really an honor to come and get to fly this with the Collings Foundation. They, these airplanes have been around for a long time. This thing's 70 years old, and it'll be here after we're all gone. We're just kind of the custodians of it right now, and to be able to experience that is just an honor. And then to meet, some of the guys that flew and worked on these as well. Those guys are going away pretty quick, and it's really neat to interact with those guys.
Well, Pat, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We're here on Barnstable Today now with Kerry Bean. He's a captain for Emirates Airlines, but he's here today volunteering for the Collins Foundation to show off these fantastic planes from the World War II era. Kerry, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Now, we're standing in front of a B-24 right now. You're wearing the T-shirt. I would imagine you know something about this plane. Tell me what you know.
Just a little bit. This is not only a B-24, it's the only flyable B-24 left in the world out of 18,000 plus that were produced. So it's a very significant historical aircraft.
Absolutely. Can you tell me anything about the fighting history of this plane in specific, and maybe if it's not this plane in specific, the B-24s in general?
This airplane was one of the last made during the war, and typically the survivors were the ones that came toward the end of the war. They were the more advanced models. They didn't suffer the battle damage that the earlier ones did. But the B-24, along with the B-17, were the two heavy bombers of World War II, and these were the two main machines that were used to grind down German industrial capacity in Europe during the war.
So what would this be used for? And what would the B-17 be used for? Were they kind of interchangeable? Did they carry out different missions? Obviously, they look much different.
Yeah, they look different, but they're really two different approaches, two different designs by two different manufacturers to the same set of specifications, which was a heavy bomber to get into the production capability of Germany. They were both used. They had about 8,000-pound useful load of bombs, and that was their main mission in life. They were heavy bombers.
So if we were to take a look inside this plane, which we will, what will we see?
Lots of stuff and very little room. The thing that strikes most people when they go through the airplanes is just how tight it is in there. The crew members back then were 20 years old. They were mostly children of the Depression, so they were physically much smaller than today's average size. So you'll be struck by the relative claustrophobia of the interiors of these aircraft.
That sounds like an interesting thing to go take a look, and we certainly will do that in just a second. Now, I have to ask, what's it like to fly one of these things?
It's a tremendous privilege. It's also tremendously different from modern aircraft. They have tail wheels. The engines are big reciprocating engines, which take different techniques than jet engines do. So we do have a dearth of pilots that are available to fly these aircraft, and it's a challenge to find people and keep them trained.
Well, it's certainly a privilege for us to be here and see these amazing machines, and thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Appreciate it. For more information about the Collings Foundation, the organization that makes the Wings of Freedom Tour possible, visit www.collingsfoundation.org. Now, let's take a look at this week's remaining meetings. At 7 p.m., the Old Kings Highway Historic District Commission meets at the West Barnstable Community Building on Route 149. Thursday, September 23rd, Site Plan Review has a hearing in the Town Hall hearing room at 9 a.m. And at 4 p.m., the Barnstable Municipal Airport Commission meets in the Gorley Conference Room at the airport. Well, that's all for now. I'm Nick Cortez, and we'll see you next time on Barnstable Today.